Welcome, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. There is an article, is it today's New York Times? In today's New York Times by Thomas Friedman. Thomas Friedman is the foreign affairs columnist for the New York Times. It is about what the real cause of violence in the Middle East is. I want you to guess. I'll ask Triple G because the living martyr knows. Triple G, we have a reliable liberal writing for the New York Times. What do you believe is the ultimate cause of the violence in the Middle East? You would normally say global warming. Why is this an abnormal moment? Okay, you are right about global warming. That is correct. Bravo. When in doubt, folks, when in doubt. It used to be, it's so interesting, for the left, it's a real metamorphosis. It used to be that poverty was the cause of evil. Now it's climate. Yeah, read it. Well, put it up, would you? Because it's one of those things where you're probably thinking, Dennis is probably basically right, but he's probably exaggerating a little. And so therefore I want you to read it. Yep. Here's my bet about the future of Sunni, Shiite, Arab, Turkish, Kurdish, and Israeli relations. If they don't end their long-running conflicts, Mother Nature is going to destroy them long before they destroy one another. And listen to how he ends. This is the best. How is all of the beheading, torture, burning, terror among Sunni, Shiites, Arab, Turks, etc., how is that going to be resolved? Ready? This is a precious line from Thomas Friedman. The only ism that will save them is not Shiism or Islamism, but environmentalism. You see that? Do you realize that? If the Shiites, Sunnis, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Boko Haram is in West Africa, but nevertheless same genesis. If they all adopted environmentalism, things would really get good. This is a columnist of the New York Times. Now, why does he believe something so patently absurd? Because leftism is a religion, and the dominant religion within leftism is environmentalism. That's why. So here is a question that I would like to pose to Thomas Friedman. If you could wave a magic wand, Mr. Friedman, and have everybody in the Middle East sincerely and passionately take up environmentalism, or everybody in the Middle East that you mentioned here, the Shiites and particularly the Shiites and the Sunni, let's say they all took up Mormonism. Which do you think would lead to a more peaceful result? If they all took up environmentalism or all took up Mormonism. And I'm purposely choosing Mormonism because if I would say Christianity, then you would think that, Prager is calling for the conversion of Middle East Muslims to Christianity. So I'm taking a specific doctrine that we associate with pretty peaceful people. It's got a good name, Mormonism, but you don't normally think. Remember when Ann Coulter said we should just go to the Middle East and convert them all to Christianity right after 9/11? And she was just so lampooned for that. And I thought, well, just out of curiosity, let us say everybody in the Middle East did become Christian. Do you think there would be as much terror? Well, of course, they made fun of her because the left makes fun of anybody who has anything positive to say about Christianity, especially in comparison to any other religion. But let's be honest. What if it did happen? What if I mean, we have a very good example among Palestinians. There are Christian Palestinians, but they don't commit terror. They're just as anti-Israel for reasons that boggle the mind, I might add. Shows you can be foolish in any religion, but it doesn't matter. But they don't commit acts of terror. They're the only Palestinians who strap bombs on themselves are Muslim Palestinians, not Christian Palestinians. So it would seem to me there would be a net moral gain if there were a mass conversion to Christianity. And I'm not Christian and I'm not Mormon, so I am hopefully a seeker of truth. A way overused term, but one that I treasure because that is a great Hebrew saying. The signature of God is truth. The signature of the Holy One, blessed be He, is truth. God Himself signs His name as truth. That's big. It's big. I have a passion for truth. And so I would like to ask Thomas Friedman which would do more for peace in the Middle East? If all the Shiites and Sunnis converted to environmentalism and stayed, obviously, Shiite and Sunni, or if they all became Mormon. Wouldn't it be interesting? What would he say? Well, what do you think he'd say? He'd say, the answer is he'll never be asked the question because he only goes on shows where they are in a kindred spirit to him on PBS. Many of you may remember my favorite story. I bumped into Thomas Friedman on the People Mover at Dulles Airport in Virginia outside of Washington, D.C., and this was a couple of years ago, and I was certain he didn't know who I was, or at least I don't know about by name. He probably knows my name, but I was certain that he didn't recognize me by face. So I just said, Mr. Friedman, just out of curiosity, would you ever want to go on a radio talk show and discuss your ideas? And he said, oh, no, I don't do radio. The next week he was on PBS. He doesn't do radio when it's conservatives who might challenge him, even respectfully. Has he been on, as Hugh Hewitt? I mean, he's certainly the most widely accepted of among liberals, Hugh Hewitt. Has he been on Hugh Hewitt's show? I'm going to ask Hugh. Anyway, this is a great sentence. The only ism that will save the Muslim world in the Middle East is not Shiism or Islamism. By the way, it's an odd bifurcation. It should be not Shiism or Sunniism, not Islamism. You have Islamists who are Shiite. They're called Iranians. They're called Hezbollah. It's strange, isn't that he contrasted Shiites with Islamists? It's a very bizarre, even that's a strange thing. Environmentalism, that's going to save us all, folks. Just know that. I want to live very long for many, 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 many reasons, the usual ones that you have. But there's an additional one. When it turns out, as I do believe, that global warming will not have a horrific impact on the world, what will they do? And the answer is nothing. They'll continue to say, well, give us another 40 years. Just like Paul Ehrlich at Stanford, who bet money that the world was going to lose millions of people to starvation. And instead we are feeding more people than ever. But he still teaches at Stanford. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Yep, environmentalism is the answer. I told you that, Living Martyr. You wanted to know the answer to life's problems. Why is there so much hatred in the world? He even, in the article, this is Thomas Friedman. By the way, I made a big boo-boo last hour. I said he went on to PBS. He went on to NPR. PBS is TV. Sullivan didn't correct me. Triple G didn't correct me. The Living Martyr didn't correct me. I'm talking about the last segment. When I forget Sullivan, you're perseverating on the wrong idea. Perseverating. Go ahead. Go to the computer. Perseverate. Yeah. No, that's right. The trick is to inject a certain amount of absurdity into life, and that keeps you sane. Is that fair? I think it's very, very important. Not all professions allow that. For example, if you go to your doctor and the doctor is somewhat absurd, I'm not sure that would evoke a great confidence, right? Just kidding, Dennis. It's not cancer. It's a splinter. This bothers the... any notion like that bothers you? Is that it? I know he doesn't like. He's very sensitive, and I mean it in the best sense. You don't know that if you meet him. You think he's cold, callous, and calculating, but in fact, he's unbelievably sensitive. All right, so he actually writes, Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, the Syrian civil war is over heat because heat forced farmers into the cities, and that's when the revolution began. Isn't that mind-blowing? You know what it is?
Perseverate.
Yes, that's right. You thought I was kidding, didn't you? You thought it was like Nephthagent.
Perseverate.
It's not Nephthagent. This is perseverate. Now we're going to get the definition?
Perseverate.
Okay, we got that. All right. Yeah, I know. It gives him a thrill to play the word 3 times. That's today's word. Doesn't Bill O'Reilly also have a word at the end of his program now? Doesn't he say? But he doesn't use it. It doesn't naturally flow. These are natural.
Repeat or prolong an action, thought, or utterance after the stimulus that prompted it has ceased.
Oh my God, what a ridiculously complex definition.
Perseverate.
Okay, back to reality. The left has a very great desire to explain life through by using one explanation, if that's not redundant. First, it was economics. That was the vast majority of left-wing history has explained life through economics. Therefore, in the most concise form, poverty causes crime, not bad values, poverty. Gradually, there is a movement now to explain much of the world through weather. Who would have predicted this? It borders the unbelievable. Okay, anyway, it borders the unbelievable.